Well, speaking of one of those great guests today, it's our pleasure to welcome in a former NBA head coach and a guy that competed against Kobe, coached against Kobe, knew him when he was younger, and that is former NBA coach Tom Thibodeau, who joins us now on Scal Pals. Coach Tibbs, thanks so much for joining us on what is obviously an incredibly tragic day and a day of us trying to remember this great man and for more than basketball, but you knew him very uniquely, going all the way back to your time as an assistant with the Sixers. We'll get to that in a little bit, but I want to just first let get your reaction to when you heard the news and your initial thoughts on when you heard Kobe passed.
Yeah, and it's such a sad occasion to be on your show, but yesterday's news was just devastating. It was shocking, stunning, and it just stops you dead in your tracks, and you don't want to believe it. And then when it starts to sink in, you just feel so bad for his family, the Laker family, the NBA family, and also all the other families that lost loved ones in such a tragic accident.
Yeah.
So it was, just a terrible day. But, you start to think back of, and I really knew Kobe in three different stages. And obviously that early stage is when I was in Philadelphia as an assistant coach there, and he was in high school. And, that started our relationship. And I had never seen a high school player like that. And and he was so much more than a basketball player. I mean, that part is obvious. Anyone who watched him play, you can see, all the characteristics that made him so special. But once you got to know him as a person, you felt so differently about him just because of his makeup, who he was, how he cared about people, how his curiosity for learning. As a high school guy, it was like you were talking to an adult. He would come over to practice. We'd practice at St. Joe's, and whenever they had a day off from school, he'd spend the whole day there. He'd be the first one in the gym. He'd ask you to work him out. Then the players would start trickling in, and he would, the questions that he asked the players were well beyond his years. He wanted to know all the intricacies of every aspect of the game, and then how they made the adjustment. And you could see that he was already thinking about making the jump, about how hard it was to, going from college to the pros. And here was a guy that was he was already thinking, he wasn't saying that to us at the time, that he was thinking about going from high school to the pros. So he had this plan, but his curiosity for learning was really special. And the types of questions that he asked, it told you how bright, he was. And, he had a wonderful sense of humor, and anyone who spent time, I just heard the story you were telling about Doncic. He had almost a biting sarcasm. It was really, really funny once you got to know him, and very, very bright. And then, of course, to see what he did, as a player in the NBA, like those were all the things that he talked about when he was in high school. And obviously being overseas, for him, the guy that he studied was, Michael Jordan. He had gotten a lot of film sent to him about him, and we thought it was funny. Like, he'd be in the gym and he was already working on all his moves. Like, people don't understand how fundamentally sound Kobe was, and he mirrored what Michael was. And to be successful in the playoffs, you not only need to have great talent, but you have to have the fundamentals mastered. You have to have the ability to think on your feet. And he was already processing all of that. So he would mimic all of Michael's moves, and he had them down to a T. And we used to get a kick out of that. And then, he would try to play against players that were a lot, older and stronger than him, and he held his own. So you knew he was going to be special. And then once he got into the pros, he accomplished so much, and you saw the drive, and you saw how special it was. And then in 2008, when I was with the Celtics, and Ryan, you were there as well, and then 2010, to just see like how far he had grown, and to be able to achieve all the things that he had done, and then also, the Team USA stuff, and how he was iconic, and not just in the U.S., but really worldwide, and how he handled all of that. And then equally impressive was his post-playing career. It's and again, I think he had a plan in place. He knew. I don't think when he was done playing after 20 years, there was nothing left to give in terms of playing. he had already planned out what he wanted to do with his post-playing career. And I think much of that mirrored what Michael had done and accomplished. And he got off to a flying start, and it's just so sad that, he's gone so soon.
Tom, you mentioned the 2008 and 2010 NBA Finals, and I think for all of us, and there are a lot of us affiliated with this show who are involved in that, yourself included, with Brian Scalabrine and Kendrick Perkins, that was one of the highlights, if not the highlight of our basketball career. And one of the things that stands out as we went through that stretch, and we all benefited from the success we had in Boston, was the impact it had on you and in your career. And just tell us a little bit about your thought process, what it was like coaching against Kobe in 2008 and 2010, and then as importantly, or more importantly, Tom, what it meant to you as far as all the nice things that Kobe said about you personally. I went back and did some research. He talked about you working him out as a high school player. He talked about how you were deserving of a head coaching job, and then after the finals 2010, you were named head coach at the Bulls. So tell us a little bit about those battles as a coach, and then also what Kobe meant to you personally as far as advocating for you to be a head coach in the NBA.
Yeah, he always, from high school on, when we would cross paths when he got into the pros, he always treated me the same. He'd always make it a point to come over to talk and share things with me that, like he told me, if you want to be a head coach, you just keep working at it. It'll happen, and he was always encouraging. And then, when you coached against Kobe, there are a few guys that you coach against that are, Jordan being one of them, Kobe, a Durant, a LeBron, those guys, Kobe would keep you up all night. You'd spend all night in the office because there was just so many different ways he could beat you. And when we used to see each other, we, needle each other a little bit about, and Ryan, you probably could attest to this, there's nothing better than a Celtic-Laker finals. And so, we would needle each other. I told him I enjoyed '08 much better than 2010. He would laugh and then tell me the same about 2010 for him. And, in 2010, when I look back at that game, it still haunts me. It's, Kobe didn't shoot a high percentage, but it was, it was a game 7 in LA, and he beat us with his rebounding and getting to the free throw line. But that was Kobe. That was the essence of him. He would find whatever way possible to beat you. And so he was relentless. His drive was relentless. I guess, when you think about how persistent he was, how determined he was, that's what made him special. And I think that's what made him special in all his endeavors. I just heard from him recently. He was coaching his daughter's team, and he had questions about, coaching, and he was working on some defense. And but he was like such a doting father. He was so involved with his daughters, and he was fully immersed in coaching that team. And he had obviously a lot of other things going on, but I think that was part of his plan. He knew how he wanted to give back to the game. I know he was mentoring a lot of players in the league. And then he had many, many other interests, and to win an Oscar right after he was done playing, to write a book. I mean, those are major, major accomplishments. And he was just starting off, and he was off to a flying start. It's so sad that we're not going to see, the rest of that. But I think he's built a lasting legacy. I think people are going to remember him. When you think about Kobe Bryant, you just think about that incredible will to win, the smile on his face, the toughness, all the things that you need in life. Whatever the adversity was, Kobe always found a way to rise above it. And I think that's probably the thing that will stand out the most to me.
Coach Tom Thibodeau here on Scal Pals. Coach, I mean, you coached many guys across the league who I'm sure looked up to Kobe, guys that were the same age as Kobe. We know how fierce of a competitor he was. What did guys tell you about Kobe? Did they obviously he was a fierce competitor, tough guy to go up against, but I think it seemed like more than anyone they respected, because he walked the walk and talked the talk. He put in the work that really didn't seem like any other guys were willing to put in, at least to that level, which got him to the greatness that he was able to achieve. Can you tell us about what guys around the league felt about Kobe during his prime and even later in his career?
Yeah, and I think that when you look at, if you just watched him play, it's pretty obvious the talent that he had. But when you combine that with that drive and that intensity, I think that's what got their respect. Because not only did he have incredible talent, maybe the most talented player in the league for certainly a period of time, but the drive was relentless. Like he was trying to prove a point every single day. And to be able to sustain that concentration and intensity over such a long period of time, I think that's what separated him from everybody. It never waned. And you're right, the work ethic, I think oftentimes today that you'll get players that will say all the right things and do none of them. This guy actually, not only did he say them, he did them, and everyone could see him doing it. And he set the example for everyone, and just the way he played. And as I said, it's the way he carried himself. He gave his team tremendous confidence. He made everyone around him so much better. And to win 5 championships, and and he wanted the biggest stage, and that was something that obviously he had planned out for a long time. He knew, I think, in high school, he wanted New York, Chicago, or L.A. He got L.A. That's where he made that team, unbelievable for a long period of time.
Tom, you wanted to do great things as the head coach of the Chicago Bulls and Minnesota Timberwolves, and then when the Timberwolves let you go last January, it's I've been there as an executive or head coach. Anytime you get let go, it can be a lonely feeling, especially after everything dies down and goes away. And one of the things I realized last night was shortly after that, I think 2 months after you were let go by the Timberwolves, you were in New York with Kobe Bryant and Frank Iasolo, the journalist, for the debut of his book, The Wizenard. So if you could tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about that, and it seemed like you guys had a very close relationship, and just it seemed like your relationship transcended basketball. It transcended you being a lead assistant coach or head coach coaching against Kobe, and kind of what led you to New York, and what that meant to you staying in close touch with Kobe when you were no longer a head coach.
Yeah, no, he just reached out and he asked if I would go, and he told me he was promoting his book, and that's the side of him that I wish more people could see. And I think people did see that, but just the way he interacted with the kids that were there that night. And like for me, it was just wonderful to see, and to see how immersed he was in, the story behind the book and all the plans he had going forward. It was going to be a series of books, and so it was fascinating. And like I worried initially, when he got done playing, how hard of a transition it would be. But I came away and like just, he was so at peace with being done playing and so excited about what was coming. And that's really, I remember the next day, I sent him a text and I told him that it was incredible. Just the way he handled the transition from, I know how much he put into his playing career, and to go on to the next phase, the way he had done it, and also the importance to him of obviously giving back to the game, but coaching his daughters, that was critical to him. Writing the books, I think connecting with the next generation that was coming up was a big part of his plan. And just watching him in that setting, as I said, interacting with the kids, and he stayed there and he talked to them for quite a while. He signed books and he took pictures. I mean, he was so gracious, and he had, he was going on from there. He had a number of other appearances he was going to make. And then, we've always connected. And as I said, he's always made it a point to talk to me and see how I'm doing. And you just could tell, like, what a great person and caring person that he was.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the really sad parts about it, obviously, is it just feels like it's incomplete. As you mentioned, there's so many things that he wanted to do post basketball career, and I don't think any of us had any doubts that it would be great, and he was on his way there. And obviously, it feels like it's unfairly cut short. But Coach Thibodeau, we really appreciate you taking the time today on what is obviously a difficult day for all of us, the basketball community and beyond. So appreciate your perspective, and thanks for hopping on today.
Thanks for having me. Take care, guys.